I used her thumb to unlock her phone, and what I found shattered everything I thought I knew. Then she fell into a coma, and I had to make the hardest decision of my life. Life doesn't always fall apart all at once. Sometimes, it crumbles in pieces, little things you ignore until they're too big to fix. That's how it was with my girlfriend. She'd been struggling with an eating disorder for years. Some months were better than others. She'd eat, she'd smile, she'd promise me she was okay. And then, like clockwork, she'd fall back into old habits, starving herself into silence. I tried to help. God knows I tried. But by the end of 2023, things took a turn I never saw coming. She collapsed. Just dropped. I wasn't there when it happened, but the paramedics that responded? They failed her. In ways I can't even wrap my head around, they failed her. And because of it, she had a stroke. The coma came next. Weeks passed, then months. And when she finally woke up, she wasn't really awake. Locked-in syndrome. She could only move her eyes. Nothing else. Just trapped inside her own body. The girl I loved, full of life, of laughter, was reduced to blinking. I sat by her side every single day. I held her hand, talked to her, prayed. God, did I pray? I prayed for a miracle, for something to change. But what I wasn't prepared for was the truth. Her brother came to me one night, quiet and hesitant, like he didn't want to be the one to say it. I'll never forget his words. There was someone else. I didn't understand at first. Someone else? What was he talking about? He told me that, in the weeks before she collapsed, another guy had been visiting her apartment. A lot. Sometimes, he'd stay the night. I couldn't process it. I just sat there, numb, hearing him say it but not believing it. It felt impossible. Not her. Not us. I needed proof. I shouldn't have, but I did. One night, when I was alone with her, I used her thumb to unlock her phone. My hands were shaking the whole time. And there it was. Texts, pictures, proof. She wasn't just seeing him. There were others. Random hookups. People I never even knew existed in her life. I don't know how long I stood there staring at that screen. Maybe minutes. Maybe hours. All I remember is feeling the kind of heartbreak that makes your chest ache, that makes it hard to breathe. I couldn't ask her why. I couldn't yell, scream, or demand answers. There were no explanations, no apologies. Just her, lying there, silent, with only her eyes to tell me anything, and they didn't say a word. I made a decision that night. I asked her brother for one favor, to tell their family we had broken up before the coma. I couldn't be the guy who walked away while she was like this. I didn't want to carry that weight. He agreed. And then I left. I haven't been back since. I still think about her. I still pray for her, because no one, no matter what they've done, deserves to suffer like that. But I can't go back. I can't sit there and pretend none of it happened. Watching her, knowing the truth, knowing what she did. It's too much. Some people might call me selfish. Maybe I am. But when someone betrays you in ways you never imagined, all while you were fighting for them, it changes something inside you. And now, all I can do is move forward. Update 1. I didn't think things could get any more complicated, but of course, life had other plans. After I left, I told myself I was done. I tried to move on, stay busy, push it all to the back of my mind. But ignoring something doesn't make it disappear. The guilt was always there, sitting in the background, showing up when I least expected it. Her family never really let me go either. Her mom kept calling, texting, sending me updates on her progress, even pictures of her in therapy. I ignored most of them, deleted the messages without reading, but some nights I'd stare at my phone, wondering if I was making the right choice by staying away. Then her brother texted me. He said she had been asking about me, trying to spell out my name in therapy, blinking frantically whenever they mentioned me. At first, I didn't care. It didn't change anything. But then he said something that hit me different. He told me that she cried. Not just a few tears, but full-on sobbing, eyes wide, shoulders shaking, the kind of crying that makes you feel it in your chest. And that got to me. Even after everything she did, I couldn't get the image out of my head. So, I went back. Just once, or at least that's what I told myself. Walking into that hospital room again felt like stepping into another life, like I was visiting a ghost of the person I used to love. She looked smaller, fragile, her eyes darting around the room until they landed on me. I swear I saw relief in them, like she thought she'd never see me again. I didn't say anything at first, just sat down and looked at her. She blinked rapidly, and the nurse brought out that letterboard thing they used to help her communicate. It took her a while, but she spelled out one word: sorry. I didn't know how to feel. Sorry didn't fix anything. Sorry didn't take away the fact that she betrayed me, lied to me, made me question everything we had. I just sat there staring at the board, waiting for something more, but she just kept blinking at me, waiting for me to say something. I finally asked why. Why him? Why them? Why any of it? Her answer was all over the place. Lonely, scared, you busy, I bad. Those were the words she spelled out, and honestly, they didn't mean anything to me. I wanted to know if she loved him, if it meant something, if I had been some kind of placeholder the whole time. But I didn't ask because deep down, I didn't want to know. Before I left, she spelled out another word: please. I asked please what, but she just blinked at me, and I couldn't sit there any longer. I didn't plan on coming back after that, But the universe has a messed up sense of humor. Her brother called me again, said there was something I needed to know. The guy she had been seeing before the coma had been showing up at the hospital, trying to see her. Apparently, he had been calling her mom, leaving voicemails, even sent flowers once. Her mom had been shutting it down, but he wasn't backing off. Hearing that messed me up in ways I didn't expect. I shouldn't care. I shouldn't even be thinking about it. But the idea of him being anywhere near her made me feel something I didn't want to admit. I asked her brother what she thought about it, if she wanted to see him, and he told me she didn't blink when they mentioned his name. Nothing, no reaction. That should have made me feel better, but it didn't. I told myself I was done, but somehow, I ended up back at the hospital a few days later. I don't even know why. Maybe I wanted to see if she'd say something, if she'd tell me it was a mistake, or if she'd finally admit that she had feelings for him. But she didn't do any of that. She just looked at me, blinking slowly like she was tired of it all too. I asked if she loved him, just came right out with it because I couldn't keep carrying that question around anymore. It took her a long time to answer, but she finally spelled out no. And just like that, I felt lighter. Not because it changed anything, but because I finally had something concrete. Before I left that day, her mom pulled me aside and thanked me for coming, said it meant the world to her. I nodded, said something about how I just wanted to make sure she was okay, but the truth is, I don't even know why I went. Maybe I needed to see her one last time, maybe I wanted closure, or maybe I just couldn't let go completely. But here's where things took a turn I didn't expect. A few weeks after my visit, her brother called me again. I almost didn't pick up, but something told me I should. He said they found out something about the guy she had been seeing, that it wasn't just casual, that he had been pressuring her, manipulating her. He told me about messages they found on her old phone, things she never told anyone, things that made me sick to my stomach. He had been pushing her to see him even when she didn't want to, making her feel guilty, feeding into her insecurities. I didn't know how to respond to that. Part of me was angry, furious even, but another part of me just felt empty. Like it didn't matter anymore because it was too late to change anything. Her brother asked if I wanted to come see her again, if I wanted to be there for her now that they knew the truth, but I didn't have an answer for him. I spent the next few days going back and forth in my head. Could I forgive her? Could I look past everything now that I knew it wasn't entirely her fault? I wanted to, I really did. But every time I thought about us, I kept going back to those texts, those nights I sat alone thinking everything was fine while she was with someone else. In the end, I decided to go back, just one more time. Not for her, not for closure, but for myself. I needed to see if there was anything left worth saving. When I walked into the room, she looked at me the same way she always did, hopeful but tired. I sat down and told her I knew everything, that I knew he pressured her, that it wasn't just her making those choices. She blinked slowly, and for the first time, I saw real regret in her eyes. Not just guilt, but something deeper, something I couldn't explain. She spelled out "I'm sorry" again, and this time, I believed it. I didn't forgive her, not yet, maybe not ever, but I believed her. And that's something. I left that day without any real answers, but I felt like I could finally breathe again. Maybe it's not about getting closure, maybe it's just about accepting that some things don't have a perfect ending. Update 2. I thought I was done with this, but things never stay buried for long. After my last visit, I told myself I had closure, that I didn't need to see her again. I convinced myself that believing her apology was enough, that knowing the truth should have brought me some kind of peace. But life doesn't work like that. Her brother texted me again. I ignored it at first, but then he sent another, saying it was important. Apparently, she had started having panic attacks during therapy. Bad ones. They'd try to get her to practice spelling out words, and she'd just break down, eyes darting everywhere, breathing erratic, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't talk, couldn't explain what was wrong, and they were worried it had something to do with me. I felt sick reading that. I hadn't even thought about what my visits might have done to her. Maybe seeing me brought back everything she'd been trying to push down, or maybe she just couldn't handle it. Either way, I didn't want to be the reason she was suffering more than she already was. I decided to visit again, but this time, it felt different. There was no anger left, no burning need for answers, just exhaustion. When I walked in, she looked at me, and I could tell she had been crying. Her mom left us alone, and I sat down, waiting for her to start blinking. She didn't. For a long time, she just stared at me, like she was afraid to even try communicating. I finally asked if she wanted me there, and after a few seconds, she blinked twice for no. That hit me harder than I expected. I thought I was prepared for it, but hearing, or seeing, it directly from her made everything real in a way it hadn't been before. I asked if it was because of what happened before, if it was about him. She blinked yes. That was the first time I really let myself think about how much damage he had done to her, how much damage I might have done by walking away when she needed someone the most. I told her I understood, that I wouldn't come back again if that's what she wanted. She blinked yes again. It should have been simple. She asked me to leave, and I should have just left, right? But something made me stay a little longer, just sitting in silence. Eventually, she blinked and slowly spelled out something that nearly broke me. I miss you. I didn't know what to say. I still don't. It's like we're stuck in this loop where she regrets everything, and I can't move past it. I told her I missed her too, because it was the truth. Despite everything, I did. I missed the version of her that existed before all of this, before the lies and the secrets. But the problem is, I don't know if I miss her or if I miss who I thought she was. Before I left, I asked one last question, probably the only one that still really mattered to me. I asked if she ever really loved me, or if I was just convenient. It took her a long time to answer, and honestly, I thought she might not. But then, letter by letter, she spelled out I love you. I don't know if I believe it. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But I left without saying anything else, because honestly, what's left to say? Since then, I've been trying to move forward, but it's not as easy as I thought it would be. The guilt, the anger, the sadness, it all comes in waves. Some days, I feel like I made the right choice by walking away, and other days, I wonder if I should have stayed, should have fought harder for her. But I can't keep living in what ifs. I haven't heard from her family since that visit, and part of me is relieved. The other part wonders if she's still asking about me, if she's still thinking about everything we went through. One thing I do know is that I can't keep waiting for closure that's never going to come. Some things just don't end neatly, and maybe that's okay. But man, I wish it didn't hurt this much. Update 3. I didn't expect to be writing this, but I guess part of me knew I'd have to eventually. It's been a while since I last saw her, and I've been doing my best to move on, to live my life without constantly looking back. Some days are easier than others. Some nights, not so much. But I told myself I was done, that I had done everything I could, and it was time to let go. Then I got a call from her mom. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. I could hear it in her voice the second she spoke. Something was wrong. She didn't waste time, just said my ex was in the hospital again, that things weren't looking good. Infection, complications, something about her body not holding up the way they'd hoped. I barely heard the details, just that I should come if I wanted to. I sat with that for a long time. I thought about ignoring it, about pretending I never got the call. But deep down, I knew I had to go. Not for her, not even for me, but because it felt like the right thing to do. Walking into that hospital felt different this time. Everything was quieter, heavier, like even the air knew what was coming. Her mom hugged me when she saw me, and for the first time, I didn't feel awkward or out of place. I was just another person who cared about her, and that was enough. She looked worse than before. Smaller, weaker, like she was slipping away piece by piece. When I sat down beside her, her eyes opened, and I could tell she was surprised to see me. The nurse brought over the letter board, but she didn't even try to spell anything. She just stared at me, tears welling up in her eyes. I didn't know what to say, so I just told her I was there. That's it. I'm here. She blinked once, and I swear I saw the tiniest bit of relief in her expression. She blinked slowly, and I watched as she spelled out the same words she'd told me before. I love you. But this time, they felt different. Not like she was trying to fix anything, not like she was asking me to stay. Just the truth. I told her I forgave her. I didn't even realize I meant it until I said it, but I did. Holding on to the anger, the resentment, it wasn't doing anything but making me bitter. And seeing her like that, fragile and hurting, made it all seem so small in comparison. She spelled out one more thing before she closed her eyes. Sorry. Happy. You. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. I just sat there, holding her hand, letting her know she wasn't alone. She passed away a few days later. I wasn't there when it happened, but her mom called me to let me know. She said my ex seemed at peace, that she wasn't scared. That helped, a little. I went to the funeral, stood in the back, and listened to people talk about the version of her they remembered. Some of it hurt to hear, some of it made me smile, but mostly, it just made me realize how much she meant to so many people. And now, I'm here. Writing this, trying to make sense of everything. I don't regret walking away when I did. I needed to for my own sanity. But I'm glad I was there at the end. I'm glad I got to say what I needed to say, that she knew I forgave her, that I still cared, even after everything. Moving on feels different now. It's not about trying to forget, it's about accepting that some love stories don't have happy endings, and that's okay. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that holding on to anger only keeps you stuck. Sometimes, you have to let go, not for them, but for yourself. And maybe, just maybe, for them too. I hope she found peace. I really do. And I hope I can too.